Hello.
Hi there.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
All right, let me get started. Let me share my screen here. Okay, can you see it?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so you can see the agenda here. We'll do the release announcement, talk about the Hyperledger logo updates, and then I want to spend most of the time talking about the remaining items that we could potentially do for version 3 release. Does anybody else have things for the agenda?
Were you not supposed to talk about the Ardemix thing?
It's on the list here. It's at the bottom. Yeah. All I said he was going to join at the bottom of the hour, so hopefully he'll be here by the time we get to that one. Okay, we'll start from the top, see how far we get here. So the Fabric 3.0 beta, I have a link to the announcement here. So that went out last week. The main intent is for people to try out the new Smart BFT feature. So that is feature complete. I know there's still some tests finishing up. But it would be good if we can get some other community feedback on the Smart BFT feature, especially maybe the Raft to Smart BFT migration that's in there now and documented. So before we see a lot of people doing that, it'd be good if people could try it out. I know we've tried it out a little bit ourselves, but it'd be good for some others to try it out as well and get some confidence in that feature. Let's see. So there weren't a whole lot of other things in the beta that were new besides the Smart BFT. So that's why I want to talk about the other things that we could potentially do before a full release here. But let me talk about the logo updates first. So Hyperledger is doing a rebrand across all the projects, not just Fabric. Can look here about their update. Basically, they're just modernizing it. A feature forward approach. I don't know how you visually reference the core values, but that's what they attempted to do. And they have three proposed designs here. I'll flip through them individually. Here is the first one. So I think all the fonts are being updated across Hyperledger to match the font here. So just focus more on the logo for now, and we'll see if anybody has comments here, and we can take those back to Hyperledger. So this first one, it doesn't signal to me anything to do with blockchain, but it's kind of like something is emerging from the left.
It looks like an Eiffel Tower that fell on its side.
Yeah. Second one is a little bit more blockchainy. Looks like it's a little bit a misaligned blockchain. And the third one, I think Yakov, you've already mentioned it looked like the Databricks logo, but we
I
could.
think I personally like this most because it has like 3 layers, like the 3 layers of fabric: execute, order, and validate.
Yep, that's true, and it kind of resembles a blockchain. Okay, other comments on 1, 2, or 3 from anybody?
Yeah, I'll go against 3 just because it is what I call more traditional. It is 3 blocks. You know what I mean? So it does look like 3 blocks aligned. What I liked about 2 is it does have the concept of a block in it, but it's not it's far more flexible in its architecture. So it doesn't have that what I call rigid model. In the future, I don't know if the world's going to be linked by a Merkle tree. So number 2 looks a little more flexible in that sense, for what it's worth.
Okay. Other comments from anybody? So does anybody, I guess, is there agreement that we dislike the first one?
Well, I'll throw the thing with the first one, the challenge of that. You're right, you said it doesn't look like blocks, but more importantly, what does it look like? It almost looks like a sound wave, getting louder. So in that sense, it leads me to some other concept other
Yeah.
than I'll call it blockchain. So in that sense, I'd worry about it from that angle.
Yeah, so I can give the feedback that there's some in favor of 2 and 3. Okay, I will take that back to them. Okay, so let's talk now about the version 3 work items that are remaining. So just for to be exhaustive, I've listed here what's already been done and what we need to finish out. So already done is we've removed the system channel, Scylla ordering, and Kafka ordering. So these are 3 things that were deprecated in V2, and we sent signals that they would be removed in V3, and they indeed have been. I guess the reasoning for a lot of that has to do with the Smart BFT feature that is new in version 3. That is functionally complete. We just need to finish out some of the tests. I know, Yakov, you mentioned to me who was working on each of those tests, so I think that that's in good hands and in plan to finish out in the next few weeks here.
I think you also should mention the migration of the library to Hyperledger Labs.
All right. So that's all complete, right?
Yeah, it's all complete. We even changed the imports in Fabric itself.
Okay.
So
So
now
that,
if
yeah,
you
that was a good move.
go
Yeah.
to the old location, it redirects you to Hyperledger Labs.
Okay, cool. Let's see. So I did send this invite to Artem, just see if we can get him in person here to talk about lifecycle removal. I know he has done a decent amount of the work. He said some of the more complicated parts are still remaining. And then we have like the doc and the other miscellaneous things that, I could help with, anything that needs to help with in that area as well. But I think we'll need to hear from Artem to have that conversation. Okay, other things that we deprecated in V2 that we could potentially remove in V3. These are kind of just miscellaneous things. I don't have strong feeling either way on any of these, but let me know if anybody else here does. So specifying the order endpoints in version 2, I believe you could do that, or it's now recommended to do that at the order endpoints config in the org, so that the org can update their own endpoints. It used to be in the more global level in the channel configuration. Does anybody have strong feeling about removing this one in V3?
I think we should.
Okay. Anybody want to volunteer for that or nominate somebody else?
I think I can find someone to do that. To do that.
Thank you. Okay, config txgen. So there used to be, or there still is a flag that's been deprecated to output anchor peers update. It didn't really work well. I think it only worked in the first time you update the anchor peers. So the recommendation for a long time has been to utilize regular channel config updates instead for this to be consistent with all the other channel config. Does anybody have strong feeling about removing this one? I could go either way on this one. So let's maybe say we'll remove if somebody volunteers.
So if it means to remove, probably I can take this issue because it seems to be a straightforward removal, not so difficult.
Okay, so let's say let's remove it. Tatsuya. I'll take it. And we can create work items for these to make it official in GitHub. I just didn't want to be going back and forth in this meeting. So the fabric tools image. So we did kind of want to remove this a long time ago. In fact, we removed what I think is in the fabric samples Docker Compose. It's called fabric CLI. We did remove that from the test network. But then we ended up adding it back in just for convenience because it has the utility JQ in it, and it just made it easier for people so they didn't have to go install that if they wanted to do things like channel config updates with the test network. So that's one reason to keep it. I don't mind keeping it, to be honest, because of that. The idea for removing it would be, it was kind of a crutch that people used. So instead of actually figuring out how to interact with a fabric network, they kind of use that as a crutch to get inside the fabric network and do CLI commands from inside the network. But I don't have a problem keeping it either.
Yeah, Dave, I would ask on that, just a question as you brought it up. Are there scenarios where that gives me a capability that I wouldn't easily have somewhere else? I mean, I've been on other networks where I've had, in a sense, that ability to what I call remote into, I'll call it a different location in the network and execute, I'll call it commands, if you will, that were difficult to do in some scenarios other ways. And if there isn't any difference, if it doesn't provide any advantages, then I would certainly flag it as what I call a removable candidate. But if there was a scenario where you said, oh, I know this particular scenario, it gives me a capability that I couldn't easily do through, I'll call it the regular interface, then I would highlight more on saying, yeah, until all useful scenarios are covered, I would at least leave it there, was the thought, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean,
And
there's
I'm
no
not the guy to
technical
answer my own
capability.
question I raised. So,
Yeah, there's no technical capability that it provides. It's basically just a connectivity convenience to get inside the network, so you didn't have to figure out how to, like if you're using Docker Compose or Kubernetes, you didn't have to figure out how to get into the network, but you kind of have to do that anyways if you're going to work as a client with Fabric network.
Right.
So it's kind of a good skill to have, but it does provide a level of convenience to have it. I don't mind just leaving it as status quo though. So if nobody volunteers or has a
So,
strong feeling to remove it, we can keep it.
uh, uh, I have a question. So, have we, can we remove the Fabric Tools image from the Fabric sample first and then duplicate the image? So, also, it
Yeah,
seems
we
we
could
still
do that.
use
So
that.
the reason why it's in Fabric Samples is for this JQ. So we'd have to, I mean, I guess we would just tell people that they have to install JQ on their own if they want to do some of the channel config tutorials with Test Network.
Yeah, so if we can find another maybe Docker image or say container image or something, to provide the convenience for GQ commands there instead of Fabric tools, so maybe we can remove duplicate the image later, right? But the first thing maybe we need to figure out if we can remove the image safely from Fabric samples.
Yeah, that makes sense. You want to volunteer to at least assess that?
Maybe I can take a look at that later, maybe after middle of April.
Okay. I'll just say you'll assess, so you're not committed to actually doing anything yet, but if you can take a look at that for us, that'd be good.
I will take a look first and keep you posted.
Okay. Okay, block dissemination via gossip. I know, Yakov, this is close to your heart. We had talked at one point about maybe removing this and forcing all peers to get their blocks from the ordering service. But I think more recently you're favoring at least keeping it in for compatibility, but minimally we need to do things like just change the defaults to not use the block dissemination.
Isn't it already the case?
This one's already set to false. I thought this one was still true, but I haven't looked lately.
You can just check.
Yeah. Okay, I'm fine keeping that in there. If you're fine answering questions about gossip indefinitely. I mean, we still need gossip for other things like private data. So we can't completely get rid of it anyways, so.
Okay, we also need it for discovery.
Yep, okay. All right, so let's say minimally, let's set that to false. Okay. Does anybody remember any other deprecated features that we could potentially remove? I did look through the list. These are the ones that caught my eye. All right, so we do have another work item for V3 miscellaneous items in GitHub. Just go through some of these. One of them, somebody hit an issue at one point around a large transaction hit the new CouchDB, at least it was new in CouchDB version 3, a limit about max document size. And when you hit that, it was a kind of a painful thing because your transaction could not commit. And when a transaction can't commit, it totally stops processing on that channel. I think, in fact, it panics the peer because the peer can't really do anything from that point on. And the concern was if even maliciously somebody could do this intentionally and take down a bunch of peers that they knew were not configured for a large document size. So the idea was to have a channel config option that would even prevent endorsements, but if one did get endorsed and it was larger than the max document size, it would invalidate the transaction instead of basically stopping the channel processing. So I think this one is kind of important to do. And I could take this one. Okay, so I'll assess that one. There was a work item about updating the Fabric protos to the API v2. So in the Fabric protos repository, we do build out both the v1 and the v2 bindings. New things like the Fabric gateway uses the v2 bindings. And there was discussion about whether we should actually update Fabric to use the v2 bindings as well. We generally thought that would be a non-breaking change since there's wire compatibility between v1 and v2. However, somebody mentioned one of the contracts kind of had the protobuf library or the binding built into it. I did not investigate that yet, but that was the concern there. So this one would require a little bit of investigation first, if anybody wants to take this one. All right, we'll leave it out there as an open item. If somebody wants to investigate that, we could take a look at it. But if we don't hear anything, then this one would be deferred. So I'll call that a potential deferral for now. So Jira, the old Jira system has been archived, but there was one item in there kind of had a miscellaneous set of things that we wanted to do in version 3. That this was a few years ago. Some of them we've already done, some of them don't make sense anymore, but this one I thought we should at least talk about is removing support for the Go plugins. I think that's primarily the endorsement and validation plugins at this point. So I don't think many people use these because there are some challenges just in Go with using the plugins. For example, all the dependencies have to match up exactly when you compile the plugin as when you compile the peer itself. So it makes it a little bit difficult to pull off anyways. And for that reason, I don't think many people are using these, but the question remains whether we should keep the support in for them or not. Anybody have strong feelings? Again, I'll take this one as potential deferral in case anybody wants to take a deeper look at it. All right, so that brings us down to the identity mixer one. Ale still has not joined the call. So before we talk about this one, I'll ask again if anybody has other topics or things they want to talk about today, whether it's related to V3 or otherwise. Okay, so we'll talk about the identity mixer one here. We'll see if Ale joins, but basically the proposal is to replace the existing identity mixer implementation that was in version 1 and version 2 of Fabric with a new implementation that is already, there's a library in arrays, and I think Ale has proposed to switch that to a different array subproject just for that library itself. Because I think some of the arrays, Go libraries were going to be archived. So with that new implementation, I don't know all the benefits, but Ale would have to explain that to us. But his idea would be replace the legacy implementation with the new implementation in Fabric version 3. It would not be a compatible change. So if there are users out there of this, they would have to remain on Fabric version 2 indefinitely. And maybe even take support of that themselves at some point. I mean, we do intend to support version 2 for a long time because that's where most of the user base is at this point. But if people were using the old Identimix implementation at some point, that would become a problem for them when we end of life version 2 years in the future. So let me ask first, does anybody know anybody that's been using Identity Mixer? Any projects using it out there?
You mean out of the 7 participants in this call?
Yeah, just if you are aware of people using it, we also plan to ask on the mailing list just to kind of take the pulse of the community.
I think you should really send an email in the mailing list. And by the way, I see Artem joined, so you can ask him about the V1 chain code lifecycle.
Yeah, okay. All right, so we'll put this on hold until Alec gets on the call, and if he doesn't, we will take it to the mailing list. But Artem, thank you for joining. The one we wanted to talk to you about was the lifecycle removal. So this is in the list of things that we'd like to finish out before the version 3 release. I know you've started it. I don't really have a good gauge of how far you've gotten with it and what's remaining and how difficult that is to finish out. But you want to just give a general update on that work?
So generally, I was able to remove the external APIs. So basically, it's no longer exposed to the clients. And the only part which is remains is basically to refactor a little bit the actual code that implements the old lifecycle APIs. And for that, I need a little bit more time in order to restructure the code in a way that it looks like. I think I need something like 2-3 more weeks in order to finish it.
Okay, yeah, that's perfectly acceptable.
And
if you-
since I have so sorry there for interrupting, and since I think that the general policy for Fabric is to switch from the SDK, the plain vanilla SDK to the gateway. I think there is no need to refactor SDKs or to get rid out of the old-fashioned SDKs the APIs that utilizes the old lifecycle, right?
Yeah,
I
in
mean-
fact, in general, we haven't been investing in lifecycle features in the new SDKs, kind of in general. But yes, if there is the capability in the old SDKs, we won't be updating that to the new lifecycle.
So I think the general question is whenever we would like to take rid completely of the old lifecycle APIs from the pure side, or we probably would like to leave there a kind of error message indicating that whoever is using the old SDK, it will not fail, but it will return you an error indicating that you have to switch to the different SDK.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I don't have a strong feeling either way. I mean, I guess it's kind of nice to
Because
leave the
you
API
know,
there and just return the error.
if I will get rid completely, it will probably fail, and for people or for projects who is still using the old SDKs, it might be a little bit tedious. But if you will return an error instead and will still keep these APIs available, though returning errors, it might be a nicer way to handle that issues.
Yeah, so you could remove the kind of internal APIs, but the external facing APIs you could leave there and just return an error message.
Okay, so that's what I will do. And as I mentioned, I need 2-3 weeks to complete.
Okay,
I
so let
guess
me know if you need
that's
any
it
help.
from my side. No,
Yeah, let me know
I
if
think
you
it's
need
fine.
help or another set of eyes on that. I can help out.
Sure, Dave.
And then we have like miscellaneous things like the docs and a couple other things. I mean, I think some of that work is done, but I haven't looked to see if all that work is done.
Yeah, I will let you know once I will finish.
Okay, thank you, Artem.
You're welcome.
So Ale still hasn't joined, but I think we better wait for Ale for that discussion. And so we'll take the identity mixer discussion to the mailing list as kind of the next step on that. Does anybody else have anything for today?
Yeah, I just make a quick search on Fabric Tools. So, currently, in Fabric Sample, we use Fabric Tools not only for GQ but only for peers or something. So it seems logically, in Fabric Sample, we mount some scripts into the Fabric Tools container image, and those container image, including peer commands and also GQ, some necessary binaries for us to take some action. For example, a channel update, you know. So some which means for Fabric Sample, if we just decouple from the Fabric Tools, means we need to, well, have an image or something install
Yeah, so
peers.
for there used to be a lot more use of it, and we took out most of the usage and we made it just a regular client.
Yeah,
So like
so
if you're using your Mac, you would just use your Mac as the client to get into the network. So we would just have to finish that out, all the remaining places and do that. So yeah, it is a little bit of work, but that's the idea.
Okay, so logically, I do agree that seems we can remove the image, but I suppose also we just keep the image at the current version and then parallelly decouple from the Fabric Sample.
Okay, so I think the comment here still stands that you assess at least the Fabric Samples part of that first. Take a deeper look. I mean, I appreciate you taking a look on the call here, but we'll let you take a little deeper look and report back next time.
Yeah, maybe we should find a way to install the Fabric commands in our maybe GitHub CI already. So then we can remove the image second and duplicate the image at third. I mean, the third step will be the duplicate for the image.
Yeah.
After the totally decouple from Fabric Samples. Yeah.
Yeah, so in the meantime, you can work on decoupling it from Fabric Samples and see if you hit any other big issues there. Okay,
Sure.
anything else for today? Okay, I think that's it then. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Okay, yeah, bye.
Bye.